The major scale is a big part of the foundation for Western musical theory. Every musical note, chord, scale, and progression can in some way be linked to the major scale. Through this session, you will at the very least gain a basic knowledge of the major scale. I highly recommend finding a notation chart for your specific instrument to help you locate the notes as we explore this session. Throughout the session, you'll hear several definitions for terms, so make sure to pay attention to the definitions as we will be building knowledge upon knowledge throughout this session. The major scale is extremely vital in the construction and understanding of music, especially Western pop rock music. The major scale is simply a series of intervals, and intervals are simply spaces between notes, and these spaces between the notes are referred to as steps. To move a whole step means to move 2 notes, and to move a half step means to move 1 note. For example, if we play the note C and then play the note C sharp, we've moved a half step. If we play the note C and then play the note D, we've moved a whole step. The major scale and every scale is just made up of a series of these intervals. So let's look at the way the major scale is structured and some examples of its use. Here's the interval pattern for the major scale formula. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Now this might sound confusing, but look at this example and it will help you better understand the structure of the scale. Here's a list of all the notes in Western music from C to C. If you begin with all 12 notes in the musical spectrum, it's easier to see where the major scale is derived from. Here's the same 12-note musical spectrum with the C major scale highlighted. Notice that the space between the highlighted notes indicate the interval pattern for the major scale. You can see that the scale matches the interval pattern perfectly. The scale pattern takes you from C to C an octave apart. From one note across the musical spectrum of notes to the same note in a higher or lower pitch is called an octave. This scale takes you from C to another C 1 octave higher. So here are the notes in the scale of C major. These notes also have numbers that correspond to them and help with communication when dealing with different keys. And we'll talk more about these numbers and how they're used in future sessions, but for now, here is an example of the numbers that correspond to the notes of the C major scale. Remember that you can do this formula to derive the major scale for any key. The first example was in the key of C major, but let's do another example in the key of G major. Here are the notes in the musical spectrum from G to G. Now let's highlight the notes in the scale of G major. And here you can see the notes in the scale of G major. So now grab a piece of paper and do this exercise again in at least 2 more keys. Start with the entire 12-note musical spectrum and then choose any key you wish. Check a notation chart for your specific instrument if you are unsure of the notes. Understanding the major scale is vitally important because it's such a huge part of the foundation of Western music theory. The major scale helps us understand chord structure and chord progression structure and the relationships of notes to other notes. So feel free to watch this session again and make sure to do the suggested exercises in other keys to really help solidify your understanding of the major scale.